I planted a few fruit trees in my yard, and the HOA president acted like I built a nuclear reactor. That's how it all started, with 5 small fruit trees and 1 massive neighborhood drama. My name is Ethan Brooks, and after years of saving, I finally bought my dream home, a peaceful little property at the edge of Maple Ridge Estates, a place that advertised freedom, family, and nature. I thought it was perfect. There was plenty of yard space, clean air, and friendly-looking neighbors. But the one thing I didn't realize was that Maple Ridge had its own unofficial dictator, Karen Whitmore, the HOA president who believed her clipboard gave her divine authority. At first, I didn't mind her much. She'd wave fake smiles and drop off HOA newsletters about community unity. But that illusion shattered the day she noticed the first green sprout in my backyard. It started simply. I grew up helping my grandfather on his small farm, and after moving to the suburbs, I missed that connection to nature. So I decided to plant 5 fruit trees, 2 apple, 1 peach, 1 pear, and 1 cherry. They were neatly lined along the back fence, trimmed perfectly, and made the yard look alive. The first week went great. My daughter, Lily, loved watering them every morning before school. My wife even started planning homemade jam recipes for next summer. But then, the clipboard came marching. One sunny afternoon, I heard the sound of heels clicking across my driveway. Karen stood there, sunglasses on, holding a bright yellow slip in her manicured hand. "Mr. Brooks," she said, eyeing the trees like they were alien invaders, "these are unauthorized plantings." I blinked. Unauthorized? They're fruit trees. She sighed dramatically. Yes, and according to HOA landscaping rules, only decorative flora is permitted in front or visible portions of the property. Fruit-bearing plants attract wildlife and could lower neighborhood aesthetics. I wanted to laugh. "You're kidding, right?" But she wasn't. She handed me a $200 violation notice and told me to remove the offending vegetation within 10 days. That's when I realized this wasn't about trees. It was about control. I didn't take it lying down. I went through the HOA bylaws line by line that night. Nowhere did it specifically ban fruit trees, only unapproved vegetation that poses safety or visibility hazards. So I took pictures, highlighted the rule, and emailed Karen back politely. Per Section 4B, my trees comply with all safety and visibility standards. No removal necessary. Her reply came 2 hours later. "We'll see about that." That's when I knew she wasn't backing off. A week later, while I was at work, my neighbor texted me a picture. Karen and 2 HOA board members standing in my yard, measuring tape in hand. They were inspecting my orchard. I drove home immediately. By the time I got there, Karen was already leaving, smiling like she'd just won a prize. "Afternoon, Ethan," she said. "We've decided your trees exceed the visual height limit for unapproved flora. You'll receive a fine in the mail." "You mean the trees my 6-year-old daughter planted with me?" I asked. "Rules are rules," she said, with a smirk. "We maintain order here." That night, I sat on my porch staring at those trees, tiny, harmless, and beautiful, and decided I wasn't cutting down a thing. Instead, I took it one step further. If she wanted a battle over aesthetics, I'd give her one. Over the next few weeks, I transformed my yard into a botanical showcase. I added a stone path winding through the trees, a rustic wooden fence border, and small solar lights that illuminated the orchard beautifully at night. Neighbors began stopping by to compliment it. Kids loved picking early fruit, and a few families even asked for gardening tips. But guess who hated it? Karen. She'd drive past my house slower every day, glaring like the trees personally insulted her ancestors. Then came the bombshell. She filed a formal complaint claiming my orchard was commercial in nature. Apparently, because a few neighbors had picked fruit, she decided I was running a business. This time, I wasn't just going to defend myself, I was going to expose her nonsense in front of everyone. The HOA board scheduled a special meeting to review Mr. Brooks' ongoing violations. I arrived early, carrying a binder full of documents, photos, and, the best part, letters from my neighbors who supported me. When the meeting started, Karen launched into her speech. "Mr. Brooks' orchard is out of compliance. she declared. It brings insects, lowers property value, and promotes an unregulated exchange of goods. One of the board members raised an eyebrow. You mean kids sharing apples? Karen flushed. It sets a precedent. We can't have farms in a luxury neighborhood. That's when I stood. Actually, I said calmly, I'm glad you brought up the rules. Let's take a look. I projected the HOA bylaws onto the screen. Section 3, paragraph 7 states, residents may plant any flora provided it does not obstruct sightlines or create safety concerns. My trees are within height limits, set back from the property line, and fully maintained. I turned to the board. In fact, I had them inspected by a certified arborist. Here's his report confirming they're safe and well kept. I passed copies around. Karen's face tightened. Then I showed photos of the orchard with neighbors enjoying the space. I've received 12 written statements from residents saying the orchard improves the neighborhood. I can submit those too. The room was silent. Finally, one board member asked, Karen, why are we pursuing this if the trees comply? She sputtered, Because it's against the spirit of the rules. That's when the room erupted in laughter. The board voted 4-1 in my favor. The motion to remove my trees was denied. If this were a movie, that would have been the end. But this was Karen. The following week, I noticed strange things happening. Someone had cut small branches off 2 of my trees. Another time, my irrigation timer had been switched off. And one morning, I found a notice taped to my door that read, Unauthorized signage, remove immediately. It was referring to the small wooden sign I'd made with Lily that said, Brooks Family Orchard. That was the last straw. I decided to record everything. I installed 2 small cameras near the trees and 1 by the porch. 3 nights later, at 11:40 p.m., the camera caught something unbelievable. Karen herself, sneaking into my yard with garden shears. She snipped at a branch, took pictures, and left. I downloaded the footage, dated and time-stamped, and sent it to the HOA board with one sentence. If my property is damaged again, this goes straight to the police. The very next morning, my phone rang. It was Mark, one of the board members. Ethan, we saw the footage. We're calling an emergency session tonight. You might want to attend. When I walked into that meeting, Karen looked pale. The video played on the big screen for everyone. Gasps filled the room. She tried to defend herself. I was inspecting for rule compliance. But one of the board members shut her down. At midnight, with shears? That's trespassing. The board voted unanimously to remove Karen as president. They also issued her a formal warning for harassment and property damage. For the first time since moving there, the neighborhood actually felt peaceful. Without Karen's constant interference, things changed fast. The new HOA leadership, a friendly couple named Daniel and Maria, encouraged community involvement instead of control. They even asked me to start a community garden initiative, using my orchard as the model. Over the next few months, families planted vegetables, herbs, and flowers in shared plots. The neighborhood that once feared breaking aesthetic rules started embracing creativity and cooperation. And the best part? My little orchard became the heart of it all. Every weekend, kids ran between the trees, neighbors picked fruit, and people chatted under the peach blossoms. It wasn't just a garden anymore, it was a community. One afternoon, as I was pruning the branches, I saw Karen walking her dog. She stopped at the edge of the sidewalk, staring at the orchard. For a moment, I thought she might say something snarky. But instead she sighed and said quietly, "It does look nice." I smiled. "Thanks, Karen. You could always join the garden club if you want." She hesitated, then walked away without another word. But for the first time, she didn't look angry, just defeated. Later that night, Lily asked me, "Daddy, why did that lady hate our trees?" I smiled and said, "Sometimes, sweetie, people don't like what they can't control. But that doesn't mean you stop doing what's right." She nodded, then handed me a peach she'd just picked. Well, I'm glad we didn't listen to her. I took a bite, the sweet juice dripping down my chin. Me too, kiddo. Me too. Sometimes, standing up for something small, like a few trees, isn't really about plants at all. It's about protecting your peace, your passion, and your right to live freely. Because no matter how loud the Karens of the world shout about rules, they'll never outgrow the power of community, kindness, and a little bit of courage.